Hey guys, and welcome. Tonight we're diving deeper into the practice of Italian folk magic or Stregoneria. This week we're going to talk about the elements of Italian witchcraft. More on that when we come back. Hey, and welcome back. I am Dr. Gianmichael Salvato, your favorite daddy warlock. Before we get started tonight, please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you would care to share this video with anyone you think might be interested, that helps to support the work that we're doing here. And if you don't want to miss another episode, be sure to click that little notification bell as well. I can't really tell you where the notification bell is because they move it every time you turn around. But remember, for more content and access to our services, you can also reach me at inneralchemy.online. That's www.inneralchemy.online. There is no .com in there. So I had a couple folks who said the website wasn't working. They were trying to put .com at the end. So what I'm going to provide in this segment is a look at the first four of the five elements: air, fire, earth, water, and ether. So right off the bat, we should acknowledge that we're speaking in terms of ancient archetypes, energies of the ancient Hermetic tradition, not the elements in their strict scientific or chemical sense, although these forms are really part of the archetypal understanding. I'd also like to point out that the purpose of our segment is to introduce the aspiring practitioner and curious observer to the basic concepts behind the elements that we work with and draw upon in reference to our tradition. So actually learning how to work with them, learning the ins and outs of working with the elements would involve a much deeper dive into the ancient wisdom of our tradition and would include things like understanding how consciousness emanates from non-duality and coalesces in dualistic forms, how our physical experience can be deconstructed into the four archetypal elements, and understanding that relationship, like I said, in terms of the ancient Hermetic principles and Hermetic laws. So some of these things are going to be reserved for personal training, personal tutelage, and that sort of thing requires a cultivation of more intimate relationship between the student and teacher than I could ever hope to provide in an informal video like this. So anybody who wants to enter into that sort of teacher-student relationship professionally can always reach out to me through inneralchemy.online, and we can discuss how that works. But for the purposes of our video, in this second segment, digging deeper into the Italian folk magic tradition, Italian witchcraft, Stregoneria, we're going to continue a systematic overview of the foundational principles of our tradition. And as we move forward, I am going to dive deeper into some of these concepts as well. So one final note, and that is that before we dive in, I recognize that a lot of those who are watching, especially those who, like me, seem to have been born with a deep, unquenchable thirst for understanding the spiritual traditions of different cultures throughout the world and in other worlds. We may come to a point where some of this material doesn't fit in with our understandings of the elements within the context of other traditions. For example, the feng shui concept of the elements is wood and fire and metal and earth and water, and the elements of other cultures and traditions might be slightly different from what we're talking about. You might also be familiar, for example, with the 20th century notions of modern religious sects, including Wicca and New Age and other belief systems. And so all I ask is that you understand we're not trying to say that any of that is right or wrong. I want you to kind of set aside those notions, set aside those ideas and contexts for the moment, and realize that what we're talking about in this segment and in this series is the Etruscan, African, and Siciliano roots of the Italian magical tradition. So I'd say that our tradition's understanding of the elements, because of its ancient Etruscan and African roots, probably shares quite a bit of commonality, in fact, with American hoodoo and conjure, possibly with the Afro-Caribbean traditions, certainly with Santeria, the ones that I'm familiar with, and with even a great deal of the New Orleans voodoo tradition. So understand that unlike much of what gets tossed around on social media as the way or the truth about various magical concepts, there isn't any room for that in this series. This isn't the way. This is my way. This isn't even the definitive way of Italian folk magic or Italian witchcraft. It's the tradition of my ancestors. It's my tradition. So you might find aspects of what I share with you that resonate with you, in which case you might want to stick around and participate in the deeper dive that we take each week. Or you might not, in which case there are probably some fantastic videos on Netflix or Pornhub or whatever that you could be watching during this time and get a lot more out of. Either way, it's none of my business. My hope is to bring value. My hope is to just kind of share with you guys what it is that I do, how I do it, why I do it. And then for you to be able to have the experience of saying, hey, that resonates with me, that sounds right. That doesn't sound like it resonates with me, but maybe serve as a springboard for you to find what does. So we're going to go ahead and dive in tonight. I am going to, for some of these weeks, it's easier for me to have have materials on the screen, so you guys aren't just looking at me. But if this sounds like something that you're excited about, go ahead and put "I'm excited" in the comments. Let me know where it is that you're watching from too, if you wouldn't mind putting that in the comments right now. That just gives me a better sense of where folks are coming from, and I think I'll probably just go ahead and answer the questions, your questions, at the end of the presentation, rather than trying to take them during the presentation. It might make it a little bit easier for folks to get through this. So let's go ahead and dive in with the first slide. Okay, it looks like it actually worked. So we're going to go ahead and dive in to our presentation on part 2, the elements, talking about Stregoneria, the Italian witchcraft or Italian folk magic tradition. So when we talk about Stregoneria and we talk about the use of the elements, it's important that we go ahead and understand right up front that Stregoneria is not a religion. It's unassociated with the vecchia religione that modern Stregoneria is based on. So I want people to understand that Italian folk magic has never had a religious structure. So whatever your particular religion, whatever your particular background is, this is something that can work within the context of your life. Stregoneria serves as a really complete magical system focused on living in inner harmony with the natural and supernatural world as a means of empowering ourselves and as a means of really understanding the energies that are around us. We say that in our tradition we work with the energies around people and circumstances and conditions, and we manipulate those energies. We work with those energies in order to in order to affect change. The strega is able to solve everyday problems, including relationship issues, health and wellness concerns, warding off trouble or harm, binding potential harmful forces, and things like that through the use of talismans and charms and ritual work, through the use of herbal and holistic preparations, as well as alchemy and mastery. So what we often see at the foundation of any magical tradition is that we, in the 4 principal elements that we work with is really based on learning to work with those elements of air and fire, water and earth at the core of that tradition. So what we're going to talk about, like I said in the introduction, is the Afro-Italian folk magic tradition. And these are the foundational elements of the material world. So they have their place in the physical world. And when combined with the fifth element, or ether, they represent the fundamental principles of magic itself. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means as we go forward. This week we're going to focus, though, only on those first four elements. Next week's entire program is going to be talking about the fifth element, or ether. So many of you are probably familiar with the expression "as above, so below." This truth that the microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm, as above, so below, is really the foundational principle of Hermetic laws and Hermetic principles, and can be seen at the heart of all that we do as practitioners, recognizing that unless we are fully engaged in a process of continually striving for harmony with nature, harmony with the universe, harmony with the cosmos, we will be ineffective. So let's talk about that first element, the element of air. Air is represented by the sky and wind and birds and mountaintops, whatever the imagery that comes to mind when I say the word air. We know that metaphysically it's associated with our mind. It's associated with the intellect and communication. Air is also the element that we associate with divination. So in our practice, you'll often see us use feathers or incense as representations of the air. And we're going to talk a little bit about, as when we get to the near the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk to you about not making yourself crazy when it comes to looking for specific representations of air. Specific, don't get so hung up on having to use the exact thing that we're talking about if something else keeps coming to your mind, another representation. Like I said, for me, feathers and incense have always been a part of our tradition. And so in talking about this, we talk about specific incenses, roots or herbs that we might burn to represent air, whether burning them directly or placing them on top of a charcoal briquette, to represent things like drawing money in or expelling negativity. I'm actually realizing here that my video is probably going to be in the way, so I'm going to take that out. There we go. But the properties of the air elements, such as purification, drawing in, lifting up intention, strengthening our intuition, can be found in some of these things that we burn as sort of an incense, a representation of that element in our working. So bayberry draws money in, for example. Camphor expels negativity. Cinnamon is burned for sexual attraction work. Jasmine for intuition, myrrh for stability. And depending on where we live, the next element is the element of fire, and that can be expressed in our work a number of different ways. It could be sitting outside of outside in your backyard around a little fire pit, or it can be a big bonfire. It could be a candle. It could be the largest or the smallest of flames. But the element of fire is still the same. The element of fire is still represented there. And so the spiritual energies of fire are still the same. Fire is the element of transformation. It's associated with illumination and health and strength and creativity. And as we think of fire, we realize that it's always moving, even when it might be rooted in a single spot, like a candle or a campfire. It's the most active and animated of the magical elements. So in the Italian tradition, we often use candles either dressed with colored ribbon or with flowers of that particular color to give the candle color. And more often we use colored candles themselves to represent specific intentions. So some examples of these intentions, and this is by far not a definitive or an exhaustive list, but we would use black to promote change or increase power. Black would also be used for eliminating negativity or for hexing somebody, for baneful magic. Blue would be used for insight and healing and comfort. Gold for prosperity and celebrity. Green for abundance or growth. Orange for clarity, healing energy, and attraction. We would use purple for ascension, spirituality, a sense of coming into our own power. Silver for awakening psychic powers within ourselves, also for comfort. Yellow for renewal and creativity. White for the ancestors, for peace. White candles are also used as sort of the all-purpose candle. And the idea here is that the colors themselves help us in visualization. When we start to recognize, the more we begin to work within the tradition, we begin to create anchors in our mind that blue is about insight and healing, that orange is about excuse me, attraction and healing energy or clarity. And so these anchors in our mind help us to make our intention more focused and more clear. And so if you don't have, for example, a green candle for abundance or growth, you can go outside and grab a couple blades of grass or a leaf, or just take a lid from a container or something in your home that's green and place the candle on top of it. This is really about focus, and I keep coming back to this because some folks get hung up. It's very easy to do that if you don't understand that these are tools that we use. The magic itself is within you. That's the fifth element. So as we continue, we talk about the element of earth, like all the elements, as a living, breathing entity. It manifests both in the soil and seed. We see the earth in the eternal rhythm of growth and harvest and decay and regeneration. Earth is certainly one of the best representations of that ancient mythos that gets anthropomorphized or made into almost human-like form in the story of the maiden, the mother, and the crone. Earth is a grounding element. We can easily remember that by the fact that we often call the earth our ground. And it's used for its power in keeping us centered, keeping us focused, keeping us calm during the most chaotic twists and turns that life throws our way. However, in our tradition, we also use earth from various specific locations. So the specific energies, or what we call the genius loci, the spirits of that particular place, and the effects that those specific elements have in our working or our spell. So we use these very specific types of earth. Examples of that would be taking some of the earth from banks for money spells, or cemeteries to enhance psychic ability or our connection with the ancestors. Taking earth from gardens for love spells, or courthouses for legal matters, malls or marketplaces for employment, hospitals for healing work, churches or synagogues or temples for spiritual insight. And we always remember that as we're taking a handful of earth for spell or working, that we leave an offering out of respect. And we're going to talk about that as we get more deeply into the physical workings themselves, as we talk about how we use these things specifically. But the idea here is that if we're taking something from a place, we always spend some time with that place. We ask for permission. We leave an offering. It could be something as simple as leaving a cup of water, pouring a cup of water or beer or alcohol, leaving an offering of a piece of food. A lot of times when I'm going along the riverbanks, I recognize that the homeless gather there, and so the offering that I'll leave will usually be on a little plastic plate, and it will include several pieces of fruit, maybe a bottle of bottled water. I'll pour a little of it into the earth and leave a sealed bottle there. And there, I'm not only giving to the earth, I'm not only leaving my offering, but that offering will then be used by somebody who happens to come along who might be hungry. And in so doing, that's still feeding and nourishing the earth as well. So we always remember that we bring gratitude and ask permission as we're taking these things from nature, from all around us. Now, water can be manifest in so many different ways. It's air. It's one of those things that water can appear as vapor. It can manifest as the raging sea or a rainfall. It can be a storm or thirst quenching drink, and it's associated with the moon, with psychic abilities and dreams. Water is the realm of emotions because it is a shapeshifter. It moves easily through the world by following the path of least resistance and by transforming itself. So they say in our tradition that one of the greatest powers that water has is in its receptivity, its ability to hold on to or retain an energy that is directed toward it or focused into it. So as a result, we use water to consecrate, we use water to cleanse ourselves, we use water to nourish and comfort. So as this element cleans us and nourishes us and comforts us, consecrates us, or holds on to that attention, it can have various uses in our actual practice. So we might use water, for example, from the ocean to bring peace of mind, or from the river, as I often do. This photograph is a picture of the riverfront by our home, to consecrate sacred tools in our craft. In our tradition, we take a piece of wood that's been sort of roughly hewn and place it into a riverbank for a period of a year, and that's what creates the knife that we use in our ritual work. We might use the first spring rain water for luck and for growth, full moon water for fertility and abundance, or possibly for healing. And we use storm water quite often to enhance the power, the sort of the magnetism and energy of our magical spells. Water can be used for the removal of hexes and for the blessing or consecration of those who are called to a specific working. So it is one of those really powerful and flexible elements that depending on how we use it, and again, we'll talk more about specifically how we use it in a future segment. And so the most important thing, I think, as we wrap up our conversation about the elements themselves, is that we understand that our role as practitioners is to work in harmony with the world around us, and that means using what you have. Our tradition was born out of the countrysides in Italy and Sicily and Africa and Tuscany, and someone living 50 miles out in the middle of nowhere, maybe in the Appalachian Mountains here, wouldn't have access to readily have access to a bank or to a marketplace, a mall, they could gather a few coins together and put them in soil that came from outside their home and manifest that same energy, that same intention, as if they went and drew some earth from a bank, for example, or from a marketplace. Water from the ocean might be really hard to come by if you live in the middle of Phoenix, but we can place water in front of a photograph of one of our favorite beaches, or of a place that we've always wanted to go, like Bora Bora, the Maldives. We can place a bowl of water in front of that and set our intention, and that's going to have the same energy. Maybe sprinkle a little bit of salt so that you get that feeling of, okay, now this is salt water. This is really the same stuff of the energy. And remember that you're working with primordial energies here. So don't let anyone tell you that your work is not going to manifest because you weren't able to get cemetery dirt, you weren't able to get water from an ocean, or you weren't able to get storm water, or whatever the case might be. You know, when the time comes for us to do a particular working, we might not have, even though I live in an area where I can always get storm water, I can always get earth from the different places. I might be out of storm water, and the time to do the work might be now. And if I wait until the next storm, it may be too late. So understand, this is about working with the energies around circumstances and people and places, and tapping into the energy that these elements have, and the magic that they possess, the magic that they unlock inside of us. It's not that the element itself is the only source of the power. If we are part of that same stardust, if we are one with the universe, then all of the power of water exists within us. All of the power of fire exists within us. All of the power of earth exists within us. All the power of air exists within us. The magic itself is the ether. So understand that we work with those energies, and we use the tools around us as a way of being in harmony. It's a practice of mindfulness. It's a practice of using what you have to affect the change that you can. And so I really hope that I'm not even sure of how long we've gone. I'm trying to keep these at 20 to 30 minutes per segment so that folks can actually absorb them. Like I said, next week, because ether is such a broad and expansive part of the elements, I think I'm going to need the entire segment to talk about that. But if you have any questions tonight, this would be the time to ask them, or think about it and come back and watch this again and again. And as you ask questions, post them. I will be sure to answer those questions, and and begin to think about what material in this course starts to resonate with you. Pick up on that and go with that. Maybe the candle aspect just really made you excited. Maybe you thought, oh, I could do candle magic. And so allow us to continue to explain how that works, how the Italian folk magic tradition approaches that. And if something resonates with you, work with it. If it doesn't, just let it go. There are lots of other traditions out there that you could be looking at and following. But I hope that this is beginning now to sort of make sense to you guys, that we're starting to build. We talked about the basics last week. This week we're talking about moving forward and working with the elements. As next week we're going to wrap up working with the elements, and then we're going to get into some of the specifics that will help make this more sense, and also give you more working tools to begin your practice. So I would recommend that if you really want to gain some insight, just after watching this program, sit with it for a little bit, close your eyes and just sort of breathe in. It might be a really good time to light some of your favorite incense and allow that space to bring you to a centering point, to bring you, as we say at the end of every one of our presentations, back to the present moment, because that's where your power exists. It's the only place where any of our power exists. Allow that moment to be filled with awareness. Allow it to be filled with gratitude. Allow it to be filled with an openness that these ideas can wash over you, and that which you need to take for your journey might make itself better known to you. And always, as we say at the end of every one of these programs, remember, the best is yet to come, my friends. We'll talk to you soon. Alchemy.